Hey guys, this is Caroline. I'm just going to quickly go through a little introduction about freeforming and how to use actual freeform area. You should definitely have some sort of experience before, in advanced CAD, in order to do advanced CAD, and just like some other form of software, if that's either SolidWorks or first year CAD. But now we are teaching Fusion, so hopefully some of these things will be able to kind of speed you up on how to use the interface and just how to use those kind of more complex tools. The way that this freeform works, first you just simply enter it by creating a form. So in Solid, you just go into Solids, into Form. When you create a new form, it does create a new feature in the timeline, but it is like another program in Fusion essentially, because it does work quite different. So we have all these options that you can start with and all these different kind of features which you can actually do and modify them at how you can go along. The most basic one that has been used is the box. So you normally want to always start off with the origin. So remember to always keep the right plane. It's the same thing like in SolidWorks. So we're just going to go into like 100. We'll just go by 100 by 100. Even though this one is still not 100, that's okay. We're just going to make it 170 maybe. But you know, the overall kind of same shape. But this kind of control panel here on the side will just help you to kind of navigate and just, you know, to have the right kind of dimensions. So we're just going to go enter. So we can just so we can really have some proper control over it in here, even different faces, how many faces we want. So that's 2 faces here. So it is a bit rounded out. Maybe we'll go 100 here as well. Maybe make that. So the best way of understanding is that Fusion makes all of these faces. Also another way of actually seeing the face, you can also go into different display mode, which is, you know, your more rectangular one, or your control frame display, or your smooth display. So the epitome of like what freeform is, it actually understands, you know, this kind of geometry. Even if you go Alt 1 or Alt 2, 3, parameters also your computer works with and actually use like different kind of geometry. So when we get these faces, this actually, what this computer actually tries to do is actually blend them together. So it's called T-spline modeling. Instead of making a face that it like connects with a surface or an edge or anything like that, it just tries to kind of, you know, blend all these edges in nicely. So as you can see here, the curvature is all really nice and smooth here. So we're going to do a little switch with like the box mode, and this is technically what Fusion sees. This is technically what it calculates. It calculates off all of this, like using those kind of spline surfaces. You can also use the control frame, which is, you know, again when you press like Alt 2, or if you just press in here, this one right there, and this might be actually a really good way of showing it off. But yeah, the Alt 1, 2 and 3, that is for Windows people, so if you guys are struggling with it a little bit with the Mac side, this is definitely for Windows, the Alt bit. So looking at the second view, it actually helps us to kind of identify it a lot more easier, but we can see these kind of straight lines. So we can go into Edit Form, and this will allows us to pick these different faces, so and it will even highlight them as well. We're going to use this inner one right here, and I'm just going to move it a little bit. You can just literally modify it by just pushing up the faces. As you can see, the box form has come right up and it's come right across here. So even if we are going more into the box form, it would look more like this into comparison. Even like when we go back to this one, you can actually see differently, obviously because of the face and the location where it is as well. So we can start to understand, like, by pushing and pulling, and changing this like out of the box form, it's smoothing the shape out differently, giving us a complete different organic shape. So, and it also blended out of all of those kind of ones. Back a couple of steps, so we're going back to the start. But what I wanted to show you as well is how you can actually make crease edges. So creasing edges is really important, especially when it comes to like making like a base form or anything like that. So what you can do, so when we turn this on, you can actually see when you press onto these lines right here, pulls the box all the way up there, because this edge and this edge are creased now. And if we look at it like this, it actually has a darker line here. So even when you go, you can see that there's a darker line right there, and it's a lot darker and thicker than, but yeah, unfortunately it does glitch up a little bit just because, you know, just graphic modes, like that's what they tend to do sometimes. You can definitely see the difference between this and that. And what that actually means is that that area is actually creased, and that it actually is bringing that surface to the top. And if we actually went and if we creased each edge on that side, you'll see that it will go straight to the original kind of like box shape that it was previously. So if we go across here and select this and this, so it's actually really, really good to know how the box would work, or how it actually works. And even by you just doing this and you not doing a couple of the other ones, you can actually see like how it actually works like across these faces. But when you click it, it really just creases it and brings it all the way up to the top. And you can get some really like great results by like just these kind of simple commands, and like just by doing these simple edges. So even if you want some interesting and smooth transitions and still want to control it, this is pretty much, you can definitely use the crease tool. And generally early on in the modeling stage, I use like creases more, just because we find that it does get hard to control all these surfaces and edges when it gets more complicated. And trying to create these kind of fillets with the frame form can kind of have a bit of a glitch, or it can become out of control as well, because there's nothing kind of locking it all in place, you know. Realistically, it's not really locking it into place really. So yeah, so try to generally avoid making fillets like this. So when you do come out of that kind of free form, you know, workspace, it is then a solid body if it's sealed. So looking in here, you can just see your solid body straight away here. Even as you can see here, it's actually technically still that same box shape. So if you go through those kind of commands, you can actually see how that is still, you know, like the box shape. It hasn't really changed that like that much when it comes to like the geometry, like the actual geometry or the mathematical, like in order to understand how it's calculating it all. Like it has those creased edges, but it still has it, but it still manipulates it in the same kind of way. And we can still manipulate it that right now. So even by like, so what you need to do then is you first need to like finish, you know, you can either finish form, but you can still fit, you know, like fill it with it now, and then still get into like edit form. So if you're going for like more sharp edges or anything like that, so always try to do the fillets kind of like in the solid modeling stage. So if you are doing something that is a little bit more complicated, I would recommend first kind of doing, you know, your form kind of thing, and then try to put your fillets in later when you finish your form, instead of doing it with fillet form. But as you can see here, it's still kind of like this box shape that we were talking about before, and you might be able to see the crease lines. It's just using, you know, like creased edges. It's not much any different. It still manipulates in the same sort of way. So if we go back into our frame form, we can really like go into here, and we can just grab those two edges and like pull this out, and before you know it, you know, we nearly have a different kind of shape. Yeah, we're just going to pull that out. Maybe we won't do this one. Maybe we'll do that one over here. That one looks like more fun. Awesome, we're just going to pull that out. And it really is like keeping those kind of creases. It's just pulling like the top part of that shape out. And the reason it's really, you know, coming out here, it's like we didn't really change that line. If we actually go out of this and look at it from this, we actually didn't change like those kind of lines though that much. Still vertical here, but it's actually blending those surfaces as well as it can. So then we can actually make really, really nice surface geometry. And all of a sudden when we start to like pull different ones again, so even if we are wanting to manipulate some of these top ones, we can just really go into here, touch on this one, and go edit freeform, and we can like pull it back in like that. And we can really see how that like surface is starting to contour. So it's actually calculating from here to there. Sorry, it's calculating from here to there, which when you're actually putting it into another mode, you can actually see that a lot better, and how that is actually doing that, and how it kind of smoothly does it, but you know, to there. So it's even like when you see the top, you know, you see the top face, it's blending from here to there. And it's even going across there. It's pretty complex actually, like how other, you know, how these kind of like modeling softwares actually calculate those kind of T-splines and servicing. What we're wanting to do, and this is why even I am showing you this, is in order to understand, you know, how these, what we can do in order to simplify the actual shapes that we're wanting to create and get the shapes that we're wanting to create properly. So it's all about experimentation is good in this kind of modeling, but we want to make sure that, like, for example, if we're wanting to have like this bottom section over here that will come up, we can have a look in the box. Like what I would say is I would have a look in a box mode, and I would see, and so I would actually look then that, like, and I would probably then just select this one and this one here. Whoop, I didn't mean to grab that. So just this one in order to move this up. Now if we were to grab that line in here, it would pretty much, it would also do something to the top here, which we don't want it to do. So sometimes it can be really useful looking in the box mode and stuff like that, and just figuring out that, you know, if let's say you were going to use this, this was obviously then also distort this one, which we tried to achieve earlier before. So that's why it's really, you know, useful just having a look in those different contours and in the box shape, and just seeing where things are and how we're wanting to move them. So then we push that up, and you know, this stays up, and now we've got mostly the same, and then we can, you know, have also some of that going on. So we can do the same thing up here. We just grab this line and that line, and we can go edit form. We can do it either way. You can just grab those lines, or you could do it the other way. But all of a sudden when we then just press enter, we have just created this form. And if we go into the different areas of actually see what it would look like, and if we go finish form, you actually see it completely smoothing out. And now we can, you know, go in here and kind of, you know, add that fillet in, you know, which we're wanting to do. It should technically update as well. You can pretty much like drag it in if you're wanting, or you could also just go into here and type whatever you're wanting to do in there. Obviously not 10 meters. That seems like a pretty reasonable fillet. But you should be able even still to go in there and modify this by just going edit. And you can just even do a couple more creases. So let's say if we're wanting to bring this kind of out a little bit further, edit form, and we can just pull that out a little bit further if we wanted to. We'll grab the other side too. And as you can see, it is all about, and I really like showing those kind of lines in it and just making sure that, you're doing it, you're kind of doing the same even-sided. Now by actually going okay and then even doing finishing form, it should just update. But this is just one way of going about things. If you know what kind of shape you're wanting to have and how you're kind of wanting to go about it, or in order to create it. Other ways in order to do it is I'm going to start a new sheet doing like free forms and everything like that, is actually in order to create a plane. So what you can do, we can go into the free form area into here, and you actually grab a plane. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually grab, let's say, the front face, and we're going to draw up a rough, how big we would like it. And let's punch in here some numbers. So we're going to go with punch in some numbers just to get it nice and even. Now, one thing that is really good is to add symmetry. So when you go into here, you just want to maybe add some symmetry. So we'll go mirror. And we'll just add the length. We'll just add the length, not just the width, because then that would do it on either side as well. So it would do the whole entire square. We're just going to do the length, but what that actually is going to do is going to create the same form on each side from here to there as well. So whatever happens on one side will happen on the other side. So even when you see like me just selecting that one, or let's say that edge, it will light up the other one. So that actually makes you understand that that will always be the opposite one. So that will always be moving as well. So if we select that and we move that up, you see that will actually happen on the other side as well. So it actually, even if you grab some points, so even when you grab some points, you can actually see it in here. It will just bring up that section as well. So what we'll actually do, so when you're moving points around, it actually just moves like one of those points. And then when you go into, let's say we'll go into old one, you can actually see how that actually just reflects on that one corner here, and how it actually allows you to get those kind of complex shapes extremely well, and also like the smooth kind of transition with just by grabbing that one edge and making sure that that happens on one side as much as the other. So it actually really does it really excellent for some of this modeling, and especially what we're going to be doing in this course as well. So yeah, we do want to be careful because we don't want to overcomplicate our geometry. So what we mean by that is that we currently have, and I'll just go back a little, we currently have these 4 faces here, right? Like as you guys can see, and I'm just going to, so what we can do is we can actually go in here, we can go into freeform, edit form, and we can actually remove faces as well. So when you can see here, as I'm removing that, it actually removes that line as well. So then all of a sudden, you're only having this one line in here. So then if we were to again maneuver that around, or pull it up and down, we could still do that. So now all of the control that we actually just have is this one. So now we only have those 2 lines, and now that we pull this down and we pull this up, it will add that actually all the way across as well. So let's say if we take that one here, or let's say we take that one, we'll take this one up, and we'll take this one up this way. You can kind of see that you know, like how that maneuvers to like different edges and like different points as well. So I just want to quickly show you how to do that. Now we're going to go back. What we're going to do is we're going to be looking at creating, we're actually going to create some geometry. It's going to take 2 seconds. So what we can actually do is, by going back, create a certain geometry. You can punch in some numbers if we want. And by just dragging this slider, we can actually create more faces. So when we just got rid of some faces, we actually had a lot less faces. And now all of a sudden, by us dragging this whole entire thing out, we've actually created more faces. You always want to make sure that you kind of have an even number as well to work with, and just to create some more symmetry as well. And also to have this kind of like split down the middle. So what I like to normally have is even numbers. So let's say if I have 4 squares, then I make sure that I have 4 squares. If I wanted to have some more, I would probably do 6 or anything like that. So in this case as well, you know, I would probably suggest, you know, going in even a little bit, maybe here, and if you're wanting to create some more, because of symmetry and everything like that. And then you also have the split down the middle. It's just a better way of doing things. And also then we can see now that when we're in here, when we're going to move these, it's going to be a lot tighter of a radius as well, because we have this flat kind of like and curve. So this is kind of like more than that, because what we're doing is it is more than just removing these items for like a curve, you know, down here. So you do kind of get more control of your form when you do this, but it does add a lot of complexity to this. So if you do want to change large aspects to it, then you kind of have to add more faces. So for example, I would add this face, and this face together in order to kind of freeform around. Just because remember how complex the geometry is. Yeah, just to kind of have, you know, if you wanted it to be a bit more even or anything like that. So when you really need to have to push and pull, it is really easy to kind of get geometry which you kind of don't want. So when you're pushing and pulling on, and this is why you kind of want less faces than more faces, just to make it a little bit less complex for you, because then all of a sudden, yeah, you're getting those faces that you might not want. But it can look really, really cool, you know, at the end of it. You know, it depends what you're after, though, again, at the same time. And the cool thing is, by actually changing, you know, what we've done here, and now going into, like, let's say the alt mode, we can also have a look at it like this. And then you can actually see, and if let's say you needed some more curvature, you can really now go in there and then add that to it. And this is why having, you know, the straight edge and just understanding the geometry of it all is really, really good. Just if okay, you need all surfaces not to be even. This kind of helps you out in that kind of way that, you know, that won't let you, you know, you can see it in this kind of, you know, in this kind of disturbance with all of these kind of patterns in it, because, you know, that's why the Alt 2 or the 3, it's just, it makes it a lot more easier to see. Also see it like this, and this is where it starts to look like the design is a lot more unintentional in comparison to maybe what you have tried to be. That's actually something that you probably don't want, and this is where, you know, you probably want it to be more purposeful in the design. So what you can do in this case, if let's say it was a little bit too much disturbed in the actual curvature and it looks a little bit like that, then what you can actually do is you can grab the crease tool in order to kind of help your, you know, like the creases and like bring it more up, and it will look actually a lot more solid. And it actually then could also look a lot more purposeful. So we're bringing that up. And we might want to grab that crease again by going down into creases again. Okay, you can just literally press escape if you're needing to get anything out of the way. So now we can press again onto this one, and this one, and it will also tell you like to select this chain here, and it will select it. And then by pressing OK, you know, you can have like this more indented, so you actually can see how that's actually made it a lot less. But yeah, so just, you know, this is just a good way of kind of, you know, the practice. And this is like going back to that whole entire thing that every CAD modeling normally always starts with a sketch. And this is where, you know, it is great. Like I find Fusion a lot more easier when it comes to its freeform tools. It just has a lot more, it has a lot better interface, and it's a lot more forgiving kind of in one way or another. But again, like just make sure that you kind of, you know, have a sketch ready in one way or another, just to kind of understand what you might be wanting to do, or even if you have some sort of inspiration. Just having a game plan, I always say, you know, just kind of helps you in order to gather that kind of mindset ready for, you know, what you're actually wanting to achieve as well. And that can really, you know, bring your project up to like its really core kind of thing. So you should always know what you're modeling up in CAD. You should never just start modeling shapes unless, as I said, you just, you know, exploring with features. But we do want to add control where you need it. So something like this, right, which isn't like that complex in where we had previously. If we, let's say, view it from the front plane, from the box, we have these points which are really high up here, and it's actually blending it quite well, but it's nowhere near where the points are. So what we can do, we can actually go in there and add in another line in there. So in order to make it close to this one or by these ones. So what I mean by that, so what you want to try is, you don't just want to grab that point and then like just grab it like by going into it like this, and then it's going into like edit freeform. We'll go into the other display mode, and then you just grab this point and then you just pull it down. You know, you don't want to do that, because then what you can do is then once you get out of that, you realize that the point is a lot lower than it was previously, which we don't really want. So what we want is we kind of want each spaces to be even as possible, even in the box mode or in the smooth mode. So what we can look in doing is inserting an edge. So you just go into here, you go insert edge. So what you can do is you just go somewhere in between here. What I suggest to do is just to go into this, and what you can do is you just click onto that surface right here. When you click on it, it will only pick one line. When you double click on it, it will actually pick up the whole line. Just going to pick on where it wants to put that line in. This line kind of pulling on it. And now what we can do is we can change how far this surface comes down. So now, because of us adding that line in there, we can actually add that, let's say that it comes a little bit up more, so it's a little bit more forgiving than it was previously. And then you can actually get into here and you can grab a couple of those ones, and then you can just bring them down. And you can actually also insert an edge into here. So even by that, you can actually just insert an edge into here, for example, which is going into here, you're going into here, going into insert edge, and then you can just add one even into there. So when we want to insert edge here as well, but what we might want to look at is by inserting actually to both, which would just make it happen on the other side as well. So for example, that's the one that I just picked, and then it would just make it happen on the other side of that edge as well. So what we can do is we can go into here, we can go 0.5 right in the middle, which will just take a little second, and where you can see there, it's actually just blending that little bit further. if you can see, and it's just blending it from here to there, halfway to the inner, and it's also blended a lot more in here as well. But it also brings it right down nearly to where we wanted that edge as well. Actually go back into that kind of mode, and we can actually control that a little bit more by pulling these edges kind of down more. So even if we were to change the actual thinking of it, so we can go into there, we can go edit form, and we can maybe pull that a tiny bit more down in order to give it more of that kind of scooping effect in here, you know, which will help it more. And we can actually pull it down as well. So what we can actually do, we can pull down these faces as well, which is super easy. But again, once you're doing this, you kind of want to be a little bit careful, because obviously from this point of view, we, let's say, wanted to edit form, you go to edit form, and it's a little bit higher than, let's say, the rest of the geometry here, which is fine. So you still have this kind of nice transition here. But if, let's say, we were to pull it down further to the lowest point, like past where it is right now, it doesn't look horrible in this viewpoint, but by changing it, so let's say if we go into this one, which shows like that the curves of the model of the surface might be interfering with each other, or that it might have like this kind of suction kind of thing, that it's just trying to pull from this one point separate. So what can then happen is that with those kind of things, it can cause like a lot of different issues when like you're actually going through this whole entire, you know, when you're going through those kind of final stages. So you just want to think about it quite clearly, you know, how you want to go about it. If, let's say, even if we, let's say, brought this out, also if this point was, for example, a lot lower than this, what can happen is that they actually can start to interfere with each other. So like if it was like in this way, and if, let's say, we brought this one into that way, that can then cause a lot of issues. So you just want to make sure that you kind of plan these kind of things out when you're doing it, and also that you just think about those kind of things and plan it out how you're really wanting it to happen, and then what's the best way of going about it. Because as you are going along, when you're editing those kind of forms, that when you're using this, I would call like this actual thing, we call it in Rhino gumball, but you know, it also shows the different kind of maneuvers that you can actually do with it. So you can actually make those kind of things actually a lot more narrower. So for example, if I, let's say, brought this in as I did before, that would actually make that area just narrower. And if I, let's say, brought in the other one, it would probably bring it down more or up, or we can even go more in like that. So there's lots of different commands that you can use. They are a little bit more freeform in comparison to the other ones. Like instead of you just going up or down or to the side or to the other side, but it kind of helps you just to kind of, you know, how to, you know, you could even scale the kind of features and just how to kind of line up things. And also make sure that you just, you know, that all your edges are nice and smooth. That's why I always go back into this kind of mode and just even have a look at it. Another way of doing that, so you could also go into inspect, and you can go into zebra stripes. And this will kind of just explain to you, okay, so if this was a piece of metal, it would actually tell you the kind of weak points it would have, how you actually want them to go. Let's say if you did have a vertical one, so the vertical one would also actually indicate, let's say, if you had lots of drag. So if you had wind, like understanding if you had some sort of curves on a car and you had this like weird kind of odd shape right there, it could actually tell you that obviously the wind would kind of travel through this way, but it would be caught like this in those kind of crevices as well. So it can show you those kind of perspectives, but it can also show you, let's say, weaknesses of the material. So let's say if we were to use it that more vertical way, what are the weak points of the actual material? You know, like where is the stress factor? That's probably the best way of actually explaining it, is the stress factor in the making and also how it is being built. So even by this, and also it's just good to remember that, you know, what you are doing right now or what you're moving is just because you have to. As I said, you know, as you're going along, you can cause sometimes a little bit more harm than good. So it is a good balance just to kind of understand where to kind of stop. You know what I mean? Like where you don't need to kind of go into it further, or don't need to, you know, like if it looks completed, maybe try to, you know, save that one and then maybe keep building on the other one just in case you might ruin this one. Yeah, it's just good to know. So even about, so now we can go through it, and even what we can do. So another way of going about it is actually going back into our plane area, which we're just going to grab the top plane. Now we're just going to pull it out again, and we have again our the same kind of shape that we had before, but in this time, or rather, once we kind of edit, the form, instead of, let's say, where we had still, like the edit form, and we go into the symmetry and we pull it up or anything like that, what we actually are going to do is we're going to grab this edge here, and if you hold down the Alt key, it will actually create more faces onto that surface, and it will actually it actually helped us to pull out another edge in order to create another page of faces. And you can actually go out and create forms or however you would like. So what you can actually do is, once you keep holding Alt and you keep going up or down or anything like that, but if you just, like, let's say, went, and you can really start getting these really complex kind of forms where you so even, let's say, once we've done even this and you want to keep pulling them out, you can always go back into it, and let's say you're going to go up just a tiny bit, or just hold Alt, it a little bit out this way, and you're going to create one, and then what you have done then here is you've actually created this really tight kind of radius, and this, like, this other surface in here, which has become like a lot more curvaceous in a way, and you can just keep going on and just keep holding it out in order to kind of, make whatever shape you like, and you can just pull it out to whatever directions as you would like. And even if you, let's say, and you can pretty much do anything with this, so you can continue on by even just grabbing that edge again, and then, like, pressing Alt again and just pulling it out. You can make it pretty close, like touching each other, and there's a lot of options kind of how to go about it, and you can even, like, pull it out. And this is why I kind of also say to people, try to model with a purpose, because you're going to find yourself really easily, you can just make things that are unnecessarily complex, and they can end up looking messy instead of, what you might want to do. So what you probably want to do here is, in order to merge these two, is you might want to use the merge edge command. So go merge edge, so we go edge. So in here we can actually go into merging our edge. So we're going to go in here, and we're going to go this one and this one, and then we're going to go select our other two, which are this one, and then we can press OK in order to kind of merge that together. So, the way that kind of, like, that kind of symmetry looks or anything like that looks pretty cool. And you can kind of go straight from the middle plane. And the great thing is, because we've made the middle plane to be like our center origin, so if, let's say, if you were playing around with any of this kind of form, it will just continue on both sides. So let's say if we grab this side here and we're going to edit that, we know that's going to happen on both sides. Plane or the box tool, you can also use a cylinder. So we're going to come back into here. It's going to draw out a cylinder, and what you can actually do here, I always want to start off sometimes with my box just being one, just to kind of have a little bit of more of a control. And then as we go into here, we can actually, with the frame tool, edit form tool, you can actually do quite a bit in here. So just by grabbing, the edge, and we can really just pull it out or pull it in even. Or this, this is what it's really good fun about it, because then you can really have some, you know, different ways of kind of, you know, maneuvering it, or what, you know, what kind of shape you're wanting after. And this is really what the great thing is about the cylindrical tool and how you can do it. But you can also make it grow. So even by going like, what we can also do is we can just scale it as well. So by just grabbing, you know, the inner you know, what we had before, the scaling option in here, we can really, you know, proportionally kind of go into two different, you know, direction. So we can even like think about flattening it, or we can like really have some really cool, you know, things like that. And we can have some really cool like kind of like radial forms. And then we can also like drag this out vertically. And what we can actually do by holding Alt again, we can kind of like drag it. So once we kind of have even this there, what we can actually do is again hold down, and then we can just actually even grab this, and we can start to kind of like drag it out even more, or like bring it up. So even if I did it more proportionally, you can actually start to, you know, hold down the Alt key and really kind of, you know, have it even going up, down, and you can really kind of grow it out. So even by like bringing it in more, or then you can, you know, have these kind of like shapes. So if you're like modeling up some sort of weird obscure kind of like vessel or anything like that, so you just double click on that, and you can really like have it going out a lot more. So even by coming it even out more from the side or anything like that, there is options to set up, if like to set up circular symmetry. So then we can kind of select, so what we can actually do here as well is we can grab that edge in here, and we can just, you know, have a little bit of fun and bring it out this way, and then we can bring it out that way again, and we can really, you know, you can really go and play with this a lot. Another way of actually what we can go about it is actually using circular symmetry. So you go into here, like some faces in here, and it actually comes up with possible symmetry. So depending on how many times, so you can actually go two-sided symmetries, and it's actually trying to put a side in there. And if you're wanting to do four-sided, it actually tries to split it up into four. And what is actually happening is whatever's happening on this side, it's trying to happen at the same time here as well. So even if you go into 8, what's happening here, it's just putting in more lines. So this kind of like allows us to keep that, you know, symmetry kind of going. So if let's say we go with that, we can like kind of, you know, go in. So this can really go a little bit more. So even when you like, let's say you want to do some more edit forms, and you let's say wanted to, so let's say you're wanting to add a couple more or anything like you're wanting to have it a little bit more spread out, you can actually grab this and you can spread it more out. But you can really go kind of a little bit more insane. So you can actually even grab this and then actually kind of brings it out like that. And then once you grab this edge again, you can really go, you know, a little bit more insane about it, and just kind of even bring it out a bit further, or we can even grab it a little bit more, you know, up higher. And the great thing with this is that you just have some fun. You can just, you know, really
really obscure thing. And this is, you know, a lot of the times when you use like the revolve or anything like that, you can sometimes find yourself that you trying to kind of, you know, bring it back to the actual shape or things like that. Or you could have, this actually allows you a lot more free form tooling and everything like that. But you can really have a play around with this. Like, I highly recommend that you kind of play around with it and have a look. And one actually other really interesting thing is, so one really interesting thing actually, how it actually calculates certain things, or just the way that Fusion kind of understands different geometry, or how it actually, you know, how it might want to calculate other things which might be similar. Is also these two balls. So this one's a quad ball and this one is a sphere. Now, if you can actually look at them, they are completely different by the lines which are coming up. So obviously the shapes are all the same right now. So a sphere is currently what you would presume a conventional circle would be modeled up. So it uses a set of faces along an edge, and it's actually essentially revolved around, and it also goes tighter in here as you go along. So here on the quad ball, it technically is just a box. So when we have a look even here with it like that, and it's pretty much the best way of understanding it is that in this kind of mode, I thought it might show you, it's that it has 4 sides on either faces. So it's 4 sides here, it's 4 sides here, and each side has 4 sides. And the reason, and so what they have done is they have just edited slightly to bring these edges down. What it actually does is when it blends it together, so when it actually blends it together, it actually just, you know, creates a sphere as much as, you know, the other one is a sphere. It just has different line properties. But even if, let's say, but even if we go into here and we go into our zebra stripes, we can see here that the quad ball has a little bit more of a deflections around the edges, if you see that here. But you're very highly likely not able to realize that, because generally don't normally end up with just a ball. So you normally don't complete sphere shape. If you were wanting to use just a normal sphere shape, I would probably just suggest just modeling up in a solid kind of state. But if we're talking about editing these kind of shapes, but when we're really talking about playing with these shapes and actually having, you know, like to edit these kind of shapes, you know, it is really about pulling them out, or we can, you know, get something like that, and then all of a sudden it's a elongated sphere. But let's say if we had to do it here, we would have to, if we were to do all of these, it would come out looking completely different than the other one does. And if, let's say, we were to grab these kind of ones, then we would have this side kind of shape. And if we were, let's say, to do that kind of same thing to the quad ball, because it has the same amount of different, you know, faces on each side, it generally, you know, has a lot less faces, and it has a lot less, and it normally has a lot less that ends with points, and it's a lot easier and forgiving in the actual shapes that you're wanting to create. So you're always kind of wanting to have that, and you don't want to end up with square face. Even if, let's say, we go back to the original shape and we were to delete these faces, actually the sphere will just open up like that, where if we were to delete these faces, it actually ends up with point in the back, and it actually has a lot less faces as well. So it's a lot less, you have more control to this in comparison to this one here. But even if you were to added these and added these, we can pull them out both, and that's normally not a problem. But if, let's say, we were to, let's say, get rid of these ones there's just a lot less faces again, and this is again going back to that rule that I was talking about previously. When you have so many faces, kind of it becomes harder to manage, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I would always go with a quad ball.